Ladies and gentlemen, family, brothers and sisters, hopefully you're okay, you are doing well. This week, many things happened in this continent. Of course, we know what happened in Middle East, in Iran, um, and other parts of um, Africa. So I would like to focus on what is happening in our mother continent, continent Africa. One thing that we have to embrace is that Ghana celebrating its 69th independence anniversary. So this is one of the greatest thing that happened this week in Africa. We as Africans, we celebrating the 69th independence anniversary of Ghana. Uh, During that occasion or event, President John Dramani Mahama provided one of his powerful speech. So I'm going to share this speech. And then after that, we'll go to Rwanda. Remember that this week, President Paul Kagame um, address the diplomats touching the issue of America putting under sanctions the RDF. Also, the East African community had the summit. Will dive into that issue where Museveni has been elected as a new chairman of the East African community. From there, I will go to South Africa. You know that President Ramaphosa attended the funeral service of Jackson, Reverend Jackson in Chicago. So we'll touch those issues. Let me start with Ghana. Let us start from Ghana because Ghana is the first African country to attain independence. So let us now go to Ghana and hear what President John Dramani Mahama said.
Decisive steps to stabilize our economy, restore investor confidence, and rebuild fiscal discipline in how we manage our resources. Inflation is declining, the CD, our local currency, is stabilizing, and confidence in the Ghanaian economy is gradually returning. We've renegotiated our debts to obtain more sustainable, and we've redirected valuable national resources towards healthcare, education, agriculture, and employment creation. But resetting Ghana goes beyond just the numbers. It involves resetting our values, our expectations, and the social contract that exists between leaders and citizens. Leadership must be accountable. Corruption is a cancer that erodes the very foundation of our nation. Every CD that is stolen from the public purse represents a classroom that is robbed of textbooks. It represents a hospital that will go without medicines. It represents a road that will be left uncompleted. And it represents a young graduate that will be denied opportunity. Under my leadership, we're not just fighting corruption with words alone. We're strengthening institutions, protecting anti-corruption agencies from political interference, and ensuring that no individual, regardless of their status or party, is above the law. But government cannot win this battle alone. We must foster a national culture of integrity, where honesty is valued and public service is regarded as a sacred duty. Independence granted us freedom, but freedom demands responsibility. We need to re-establish discipline in our national life, discipline in how we manage public resources, discipline in adhering to the law, discipline in how we treat one another in public life. Patriotism should extend beyond just slogans. True patriotism must be shown through our everyday actions. The citizen who protects public property, the public servant who treats every Ghanaian with respect, and the entrepreneur who opts to invest his resources in Ghana's future. Above all, We must place country above party, above tribe, and above personal interest. Citizens, Ghana is bigger than any one of us. To the young people of this country, I see you, I hear you, and I believe in your potential. You belong to a generation that is armed with tools and opportunities that earlier generations could hardly have imagined. In your hands, a smartphone transforms into a classroom. In your hands, a business platform, a smartphone transforms into a business platform. In your hands, a smartphone transforms into a creative studio and a gateway to the global economy. However, I also recognize your frustrations, and that is why government is investing in digital infrastructure, entrepreneurship programs, and innovation hubs across the country, from Accra to Kumasi to Tamale, Takrady, Ho, and Koforidua. We're reforming education to meet the needs of the modern economy and expanding internship and apprenticeship programs to bridge the gap between school and the world of work. But success will also depend on discipline, resilience, and excellence. And let me give you sound advice. The future belongs to those who prepare for it. Permit me to congratulate the 52 outstanding students who received the President's Independence Day Award for school children earlier this week. I also commend Keta Secondary Technical School for winning the 69th Independence Day quiz competition. And I extend my congratulations to the winners of this year's National Debates competition. All of you represent the promise of Ghana's future. My fellow countrymen and women, I'm pleased to announce that I have assented to the 24-Hour Economy Authority Bill, and it has now become law. This historic reform will boost Ghana's productivity. Businesses will be incentivized to run across multiple shifts. Factories will operate around the clock, and services will become more accessible to our citizens. 1,000 new jobs will be generated across various sectors, ranging from manufacturing and logistics to security and transportation. This initiative will enable us to optimize the use of our national infrastructure and establish Ghana as a competitive industrial hub. And this is how we will create prosperity. I'm also pleased to announce that we're in the final stages of setting up the Women's Development Bank. This work has been under the leadership of our hard-working Vice President, Jane Nana Opoku Agyeman. Our women entrepreneurs have historically been the backbone of Ghana's informal economy, and yet too many of them face barriers to affordable credit. This Women's Development Bank will provide accessible financing, mentorship, and business support that is tailored to women-led enterprises. When women succeed, families thrive, and nations prosper. Women of Ghana, we are committed to investing so that you realize your full potential. Ghana's destiny is inseparable from Africa's destiny. Today, Africa is home to over 1.4 billion people and possesses the youngest workforce in the world. The African Continental Free Trade Area, which is based here in Accra, is one of the most ambitious economic integration projects in the history of the world. A unified market for African goods and services, a platform for African innovation, a foundation for Africa's economic sovereignty. Ghana will continue to lead by example, demonstrating that democracy, economic reform, and African unity can succeed together. As we approach the milestone of Ghana's 70th anniversary next year, let us reaffirm our national vision. A vision of a Ghana where no child will go to bed hungry. And a Ghana where education is accessible and empowering, a Ghana where healthcare is affordable and accessible, a Ghana with world-class infrastructure, a Ghana that produces what it consumes, a Ghana where merit and not connections decides opportunity, a Ghana that is digitally connected from Aflao to Hamile, a Ghana that preserves its forests and environment for future generations. This vision is within reach, but it requires our collective efforts. My fellow Ghanaians, 69 years ago, our nation was born in hope, and together we gather here this morning to renew that hope. The journey has not always been smooth. We have stumbled and often felt disappointed in ourselves. But we have never given up. There's resilience that defines the Ghanaian spirit still lives on. As your president, I pledge to serve with integrity, humility, and unwavering dedication to the welfare of our people. But Ghana's progress cannot rely solely on my leadership. It will depend on every citizen doing their part. Wherever you are, whatever you do your part with excellence. Do it for Ghana, do it for Africa, and do it for the generations yet unborn. Ladies, as I conclude, building prosperity, inspiring hope is not merely today's theme. It is our national mission. Today we celebrate how far we have come, and when we leave here, tomorrow we must commit ourselves to how far we will go. May God bless our homeland Ghana and make our nation great and strong. Long live Ghana and long live African unity. I thank you.
Yes, so welcome back. That is the president of Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama, one of his best speech when he addressed the audience and the gathering at the 69th anniversary of Ghanaian independence. So, family, now we are moving to the next speaker who shakes the world this week, who is President Paul Kagame. This week, United States of America put under sanctions the RDF, Rwanda Defense Force. So, in response, President Paul Kagame um, used cryptic message to send a message to United States of America. Of course, I shared a video about this issue yesterday, but today I would like to share also in this live streaming when we talk about what happened in Africa this week. So let us now move to President Paul Kagame, and we'll hear what he said. And of course, Kagame shakes the world with these cryptic words. Now let us join to President Kagame.
Ambassadors and high commissioners, representatives of the international organizations, members of the Consular Corps, senior government officials, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a good evening. It is, as always, a pleasure to have you here. What we have built together over many years and across different sectors with the country partners you represent and the different organizations is remarkable. Our collaboration and friendship have been vital to Rwanda's revival and development. We do not take this lightly, and I thank you for it. Nowadays, none of us can afford to be indifferent to geopolitical trends. Whether or not you believe that there was a rules-based international order, it is clear that changes are underway which will affect all of us. It is predictable that Rwanda, even as a small country, is caught up in the middle in its own way. One thing that has not changed, however, is that right and duty of every nation to ensure the safety of its borders and people. It is that duty that never changes. Rwanda is no exception. And yet, for reasons that continue to elude us, Rwanda is consistently asked to ignore threats to its security and compromise its national defense. The conflict in eastern DRC is not new. It's neither new nor is it too difficult to understand. It has been prolonged for decades due to neglect and complacency, notably by those with the power to make the biggest difference in resolving it. Rwanda's security concerns stem from the continued presence of the FDLR and its violent extremist ideology, which is the ideology of genocide. Unfortunately, that seems to have some backers in the region and beyond, under all kinds of guises. In the late 1990s, cross-border attacks by this militia from the territory of DRC claimed thousands of lives inside Rwanda. the Congolese government has provided political cover and financial support to FDLR and integrated this group into its military structures, from where it now operates with total impunity. They attacked Rwanda on multiple occasions. Some countries issued travel advisories as a result. And lately, the son of the former leader of Rwanda, who led this country into genocide, and other close collaborators of his, have been visiting Kinshasa in order to deepen the alliance with FDLR, and they have more or less openly been welcomed there. We have consistently raised these issues in every relevant forum and directly to many of you here. But each time, the root causes and structural drivers of this conflict are dismissed in favor of short-term measures and interests. Rwanda, because of its history and its geography, requires defensive borders. Our defensive measures are aimed at this objective and nothing else. FDLR is far from being a spent force, as I have mentioned earlier. In fact, its genocide ideology has been spread to other armed groups, which also target Congolese Tutsi and other communities. By definition, a signed peace agreement should bind all parties equally, and implementation should follow the text. However, this has not been our experience. It's not the case. What we see instead is that one party is expected to carry almost the whole burden. For instance, the Washington Accords clearly set a ceasefire, acknowledged each party's security concerns, and laid out a roadmap for action. Yet, even as the discussions progressed, there was a visible and sustainable military buildup, followed by action in Western in eastern DRC. Thousands of Burundian troops and government-affiliated militias consolidated offensive positions, imposed a blockade on civilian communities, and launched relentless ground and aerial strikes in South Kivu. The Congolese government's intent was to shift the balance through force outside the parameters of the ongoing peace negotiations. That is how the events in Uvira came to unfold. Rwanda has and had raised the alarm for months. Yet, the aftermath was presented as a single-point narrative detached from the reality on the ground. The blame was, as we have come to expect, blamed and placed exclusively on Rwanda. This selective pressure has only emboldened the Congolese government and all its affiliated genocidal elements to resume military action. I'm not asking you to agree with every decision that Rwanda has made, but we do ask that you hold all parties to the same standard. As things stand, Rwanda faces an impossible choice to either tolerate the continued presence of the FDLR and its growing network of militias and allow them to grow closer to our border, or to defend ourselves and be condemned for it. The choice is therefore very clear. In our position, would any other country make a different choice? And any condemnation that comes, by the way, is a badge of honor for our security forces. That honor is not something that can easily be washed away by rain or shine or whatever. It is part of us. It will remain so in good and bad times. But make no mistake, Rwanda wants peace. But we want a genuine and lasting peace on which we can build our future prosperity. We want to leave the bad politics of the past behind us forever. Rwanda is ready to lift its defensive measures in tandem with the DRC fulfilling its obligations under the Washington Accords. By the way, these accords I'm talking about, the Washington Accords, there are actually 3 parties concerned. The 2 are, 1, Rwanda, and DRC, of course. But the 3rd is United States, the country that hosted us, that brokered this process. They are part of it. So to have 3 parties to this process, and you expect only one to fulfill its side of obligations, I'm not sure what we should expect from that. And so that's where we are, in a sense, caught up in that. If fully implemented, this agreement will provide all parties the security that they need and they deserve, and lay the groundwork for mutually beneficial economic cooperation. Many of you here have worked with us for a very long time, and you know that you can trust us. We are reliable. We say what we do, and we do what we say. Our partnerships have borne fruit precisely because we have had an effective security policy in place continuously for the past 3 decades. Rwanda is strong and strong enough in our own circumstances. And precisely because we consider ourselves vulnerable to ideologies of violence, of violent ethnic extremism, particularly when they benefit from direct or indirect state support. We have made a promise to ourselves to never go back to the dark days, that darkness, we can't go back. And that is not something we will waver from. Before I propose a toast, I had a few things in addition to this, that I wanted to share with you. Contextualizing further the sort of complication and dilemma we face in all this. And we also understand it in a much wider context of the world we live in. There is the world of the past, and keeps changing over time, and the world keeps changing. And in many instances, unpredictably. But people have to stay the course for what they want to mean and do for themselves. And that's where Rwanda is. A couple of things. Do you know those moments when you had to rest of your sleep? That moment in between when you are still awake and when the sleep is coming in, caught up in the middle. That space, some of us encounter people in our thoughts, and we have conversations. It's not dreaming, it's not in between. Some of those moments, I met some people, and they brought up this subject. It was like Paul. You are not Christian enough. Why? And that is supposed to, if I was Christian enough, it is supposed to solve my problems. Because I'm not Christian enough in this person's mind, it is supposed to create problems for me. But I asked this person, I said, what is enough? How enough do you want me to be Christian? First, I'm called Paul. I think by that name, am I not Christian? Second, I told the person a bit of my story and history. That my parents were very good Christians. In fact, they used to share part of their limited wealth with the church. I'm supposed to be Catholic, side of Christianity. They gave a lot of their resources to the church. So I said, I'm called Paul. My parents were very close to the church, so I'm supposed to be Christian enough. And the person was not convinced. And I said, I'm also, much as I'm a Christian and you think it's not enough, I can't claim to be a preacher. You don't hold Bibles and move around teaching people, because that's, God didn't assigned me a responsibility that is different from that. So, not being Christian enough has also caused me problems. But I said, I have seen people who, I was telling that person, who claim to be that level of Christian that I am not. In the morning, they're out there shouting and yelling and doing things. In the evening, they go visiting witch doctors. I said, how do the two go together? So in other words, I was telling this person that actually some of them also tell lies under the cover of what they claim to be. And they end up not being Christian enough as they thought I was, meaning not Christian enough. So that is something they needed to think about. No pretense, no, and everyone should be what they want to be. And there are other measures you can use to test the value of people. Then, in another conversation, it was, okay, put aside the Christian part. Your country, Rwanda, is not wealthy enough. You don't have enough of the resources that the world needs, whether they are minerals or forests or all kinds of things. So then I said, okay, but do I also have to face penalties for not being wealthy enough? I said, what do people do to become wealthy that I didn't do, that constitute an offense? First, I was told I was not Christian enough. Second, I'm being told I'm not wealthy enough, meaning my country. So which means the combination of two should cause some of us problems. Should cause me as a person or Rwanda as a country problems in other people's judgment. But since when did these become criteria for people being right or wrong? Or to the point that you deserve no attention from anybody. In fact, I wish I didn't get attention from such a people. That's so good. It means you do your business, I do my business. And I don't need that kind of attention. Nobody needs it. The kind of attention that reminds you that you're not this enough, you're not that enough. But that means you're paying attention to me. Maybe the less attention you pay, the better for me and maybe for you, because why should you waste your time thinking about me? Right. As I continued, one evening I was bored and consulted some of these agents of AI, the artificial intelligence, put in some thoughts and questions, and I won't tell you what I was asking. I'll tell you the answer. Given what I was asking, and the answer came out as, let me read it for you. In the jungle, a lion king coveted a plush deer, grazing unaware. The deer, blinded by sweet grass, didn't see the jaws closing in. Meanwhile, a wise old tortoise stood tall, accused of eating the king's crops. Crops the king knew were devoured by his own pride. The deer fell to the king's greed. The tortoise, shoulders burdened, faced the hungry shadows, dignified. The jungle whispered. One met the king's desire, the other his blame. That's where we are, but we will have our shoulders burdened and remain dignified. Thank you.
A lot from President Paul Kagame. President Paul Kagame has spoken
The
in
Assembly will hear
patriotic
an address by His
message.
Excellency.
Of course, this message has reached those who have doubt about Rwanda. You know, if you have listened carefully what President Paul Kagame has said, that when he was in the middle between sleeping and maybe not sleeping, something come to him. Of course, you heard those questions that he was asked, but he spoken about the issue of Christianity. Maybe you are punished because you are not Christian, and those who claiming Christians, they are pretending. And this message is going to Donald Trump. You know, listen to you see Donald Trump talking about protecting Christians in Nigeria. Of course, we saw pastors praying for him at the White House. But if you look what Trump is doing and the way he's claiming that he's a Christian, protecting Christians' rights, it is not okay. But that's why President Paul Kagame has said maybe he's being punished because he's not Christian. And this go beyond, you know, recently, Rwanda closed almost um, 200, more than 200 churches in Rwanda by saying that these people are just praying, promised to go to the heaven while they are not working and doing something that is so good for their people. So Rwanda said sometimes these mosques and these churches are making noise instead of maybe praying in silence and doing what is good and light, helping people, but they are always telling people to go to the event. They're always telling the people to go to the event. And if you look at the history of Rwanda, even churches participated in killing uh, people during the genocide. So Kagame does not trust this religion. Maybe due to that, it's a reason for maybe for him to be punished. And he went far. Maybe because Rwanda is a small country. Rwanda has no minerals compared to Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo has minerals, has something to offer. That's why Rwanda is being punished. Congo has should be punished for what Congo has done. Maybe I'm just guessing. Maybe Congo should be punished for what they have done, but because they have minerals, they have rich in terms of minerals. They offer those minerals to the United States of America, and the United States of America, instead of punishing Congo, is receiving minerals. So, but Rwanda has nothing. It's the smallest country. So you have to be punished because you have nothing. And that's why Kagame said maybe because I'm poor, my country is small, they don't have enough resources to offer the world. Maybe that's why Rwanda is being punished. So those are just words of President Paul Kagame. So now let us now move to the speech made by President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. I'd like to share the message of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni when he addressed the East African community. Of course, I shared that speech in this platform. So let us now move to President Museveni. He's spoken another thing that is very important, the issue of unity. Museveni um, spoken about the issue of Uhuru and the Umoja. It means independence and all freedom and unity. But what we have right now, we don't have. We have remained with independence or freedom, but we don't have unity. Museveni has asked, when will Africa have unity? Of course, I'm very happy to see that Museveni has been elected as a new chair of East African Community. Will Museveni succeed and make sure that East Africa is going to unite? I know it will be difficult because in this summit of East African Community Summit. Two leaders, President Paul Kagame and President Felix Tshisekedi, presidents of Rwanda and Congo, didn't attend. We know that President Tshisekedi, president of Congo, traveled to Chicago to mourn Jackson, Reverend Jackson, where he met with President Kagame, President um, Ramaphosa. President Kagame was in Kigali speaking with diplomats in gala dinner. But all in all, you can see how difficult it is that in Africa we are united. We are independent, but we are not united. So let me take you to a full speech of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Here
Thanks for
is
electing
what
me
Museveni,
to chair the East
our
African
elder,
Government Authority
said.
for the next 1 year. At this point in history, and given my 65 years of either watching closely or being right in the center of events on our much troubled continent, I feel compelled to use this occasion to bring up the issue of Okonesa, Okfubia, miscooking the African Revolution. Okonesa, Kufubia in our languages of the lakes, is a process where the food is not properly or consistently cooked by not applying the necessary heat for the necessary duration, and it ends up being undercooked. Kukona, kufuba. I don't know how they say it in Swahili. They'll give me the Swahili word. The food does not kusia. Kusia is our word there, meaning kuiva. Chakula haiwivi vizuri. The food does not get properly cooked. It becomes a mkone. A mkone is the food which is undercooked and you cannot sort it out. It then becomes difficult to cook properly because the insufficient heat initially applied has cooked the food in the wrong direction. The option then is to throw away that food and cook another quantity of food. I have attached a note to this speech from our scientists describing this process, which we, the Wananchi, simply call Konesa, Kufubia, but it's actually science. It is actually science. By 1900, the whole of the African continent had been colonized, except for Ethiopia, which had defeated the Italian imperialists in 1896 at Adowa. This was squarely the fault of the African chiefs and kings who had watched the slow encroachment of these European invaders right from the time when the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople, Istanbul, in 1453, closing the overland route to Asia for Europe, pioneered by Marco Polo around the years 1271 to 1295. While the Europeans were rightly looking for an alternative route to the east by going around our massive continent, they became slave traders and colonialists when they discovered the weaknesses created by our kings. Our kings were oppressing the people, fighting one another instead of cooperating, failed to adopt new scientific knowledge, e.g. gunpowder. The Europeans invented gunpowder when our kings were here just running around with spears. Many of the kings participated in the slave trade, selling our people. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. It says in the book of the Romans, chapter 6, verse 23. And somewhere else the Bible says, whatever man sows, that's what he reaps. It says in the book of the Galatians, chapter 6, verse 7 to 8. By 1900, all those African kings were either dead or captured or had capitulated to subservience. They had squandered the time when they could have done the necessary changes to immunize us against domination. Ever since 1498, when Vasco da Gama passed by the East African coast, here in Zanzibar, Mombasa, attacked Mombasa, Vasco da Gama actually attacked Mombasa and continued to India. It was a whole 402 years wasted. Those kings wasted 402 years. No scientific innovation, no unit among themselves, etc. They paid for their mistakes. Kabarega, our kings there in Uganda, Mwanga, Tetwayo, the one in South Africa, even here Mkwawa, I don't know whether he was captured or what. He tried to fight, etc. were either dead or captured. Unfortunately, the whole of Africa also paid for having slaves torn away from their country, freedom hijacked, resources stolen, etc. Africa, by 1900, was facing a catastrophe. Some of the people that were colonized in Latin America, North America, Australia, were exterminated, or only very few of them are still surviving, and their lands were taken over by other people. However, while the leadership of Africa has been problematic for centuries, the populations are tough, hardworking, and wealth creators for millennia. Unlike the American Indians or Aboriginal Australians, we died during the colonial aggression, but did not perish. Our cattle, goats, sheep, chicken, etc., that stay with us in our hearts, had long vaccinated us against the deadly zoonotic diseases between man and animals that had exterminated the other indigenous peoples. That gave opportunity for new and more potent forces to emerge and become the vanguard of the African resistance. Who were these who resisted? There were two clusters initially. The African-American Pan-Africanists in the persons of W.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Pademore, etc., and the African National Congress of South Africa that was founded in 1912. The historical mission now for the black race and the other colonized peoples was liberation against imperialists through the worldwide anti-colonial movement. In the case of Africa, the historical missions were liberation, ukombozi, uhuru, modernization, creation of prosperity, and provision of strategic security against all threats. How were we to achieve this? Uhuru na umoja, freedom and unity. Unity, freedom would enable us to control our destiny again. Umoja would enable us to address the issue of prosperity and strategic security. How was prosperity to be achieved, and how is it achieved in other countries? With modern economics, prosperity is achieved through the production and sale of the goods or services that one is capable of producing. To sell, however, you need markets. Producers need buyers to succeed. Producers need buyers to succeed. The more buyers you have, the more prosperous you become. This is where economic integration of East Africa and the whole of Africa comes in. If we do not work on this seriously and without wasting time, we betray our people. We connoisseur the African Revolution, miscooking it. The next question is the issue of strategic security against all possible threats. If we do not understand that, we again betray Africa. Strategic security can only come, in my view, from political integration. Why? Political integration through the creation of the regional federations where possible rationalizes the geography of the defended zone so that we are able to be present in the four spheres of the universe. Four spheres of the universe: land defenses, air defenses, defenses at sea, the navy, and defenses in space. Apart from rationalizing the geography of the defended area, you need necessary muscle, size of land, natural resources, and population. As we speak today, only 4 countries have been to the moon. These are the USA, China, Russia, and India. There are a number of highly developed countries, but they have not been able to land on the moon. They are still here with us also. Is there something to size? In any case, there is no harm in having a big political unit through the political integration, where possible, to conclude this short statement, we need to answer the following questions. These are: if we do not create a big market, how do we intend to encourage and support the wealth creators in the respective countries? If we do not create a big and reliable market for our wealth creators, how do businesses expand to produce more products, create more jobs, and pay more taxes? The answer is, if we are not able, no, the other question is, if you are not able to operate in the 4 spheres, land, air, sea, and space, how do we hope to guarantee our strategic security? Somebody is on the moon looking at you, you don't see him, how do you protect yourself? The ancient area of Africa, East Africa, given the potential to unite all our people around Swahili language, has the capacity to create prosperity and also ensure the strategic security of the black race. Historically speaking, if we use the dedication to the 4 historical missions, we discover that the patriots that fulfilled their mandate were Mwalimu Nyerere, Sheikh Aman Abeid Karume, Sekou Toure, Nkrumah and Modibo Keita. Of these efforts, it's only Tanzania that has sustained the success of economic and political integration. We must salute Tanzania. They are a shining example. Even the struggle for Uhuru liberation was not easy because we had collaborators. However, mainly because of the combination of the African resistance, ANC of South Africa, the Mau Mau in Kenya, etc., the global anti-colonial movement in Asia and Latin America, the emergence of the socialist camp following the victories of the communists in Russia and China, and the imperialists weakening themselves with their inter-imperialist wars of 1914, 1918, 1939, 1945. By 1963, a total of 36 countries had got independence in Africa. There was, however, another 20 or so where the imperialists were determined not to surrender. These were Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Angola, Namibia, etc. Some of the countries were on the road to independence, e.g. Kenya and Zambia, but not the others. Little Portugal was saying that Mozambique, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, etc. were not colonies, but overseas provinces of Portugal. In quotes, imagine, Little Portugal was saying that Mozambique is an overseas province of Portugal. And that the black Africans can become black Portuguese assimilados by forgetting their culture. While at the OAU conference of 1963 in Addis Ababa, Africa had declared that the whole Africa must be free either by peace or by war, it was only a few countries led by Tanzania under the leadership of Mwalimu that really stood by the freedom fighters. Others were Zambia, Botswana, Guinea-Conakry, Algeria, Ghana under Nkrumah, and Egypt under Nasser. On account of the resistance movements, support of these Pan-Africanists, the socialist countries, and some democratic groups in the West, by 1994, the whole of Africa was free with the majority rule in South Africa. So by 1994, we had spent a whole century trying to liberate Africa from these invaders. And the last country to be free was South Africa in 1994. I'm glad to say that although the revolutionaries in Uganda arrived on the scene late, from 1989, we were able to give serious support to the ANC of South Africa and the PSC in the form of military training, logistics, educational opportunities, etc. Africa had therefore, as the century of shame for African continent, where the whole of it had been colonized and a half a millennium of plunder by the European and Arabs with the slave trade, come to an end, become free. Africa had become free. Uhuru, freedom had come. The question was, where is Umoja? Because you remember, it was Uhuru na Umoja. Uhuru came. Now the question was, where is Umoja? Umoja for economic prosperity through economic integration in order to create big markets, support the efforts of the African wealth creators, and Umoja for political integration, where possible, to create strategic security for the black race on land, in the air, at sea, and in space. Yes, some of the efforts for economic integration have moved. I worked with Mzee Moi, Mzee Mwinyi, Mzee Mkapa to revive the East African community. You remember this community had broken up. So when we came into government, immediately we started working with Mzee Moi, Mzee Mwinyi, later on Mkapa. We brought it back, 1999. I salute Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, Somalia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo for joining the East African community. Let us fully implement the Charter of the East African Community and the roadmap, as His Excellency Mr. President Ruto was reporting. How about COMESA and the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area? Some actors seem to treat this integration as optional. In my view, I have always held that it is mandatory to unite or risk perpetual marginalization. How about political integration? In the case of East Africa, we the Pan-Africanists have never relented. Ever since the student days in the 1960s, we have been struggling for that integration, supporting our elder Pan-Africanists, Mwalimu Nyerere, Abeid Karume, Kenneth Kaunda, Arap Moi, etc. With Mzee Kibaki, Mzee Mkapa, Prince Kagame, Prince Nkurunziza, we called for the fast tracking of the federation in the year 2014. However, on account of the awkwardness of the African Revolution, seeing what is happening in much of Africa, instead of Uhuru na Umoja, in many countries, in many areas, we have got Uhuru na Uhasama. Is it Uhasama?
Uhasama is correct.
Discord.
Discord.
Mnaona Kiswahili changu? Msinichezee. So instead of Uhuru na Umoja, we have Uhuru na Uhasama, freedom and discord. In Uganda, we have a Uganda proverb. It goes like this. Ekitata muhima tekimumala konte. In English, it means that if a muhima, one of the tribes in Uganda, does not die, even if he loses cattle on account of his dedication to cattle keeping, he will do everything possible to get new cattle. Africa is still there. Although we have lost opportunities, but we can catch up. What is the consequence of uhuru na uhasama? Uhuru na uhasama instead of uhuru na umoja. Economic stagnation and the suffering of the populations. What is generating the migration of the African youth that are dying in the Mediterranean Sea going to Europe? It is the narrowness of the money economy of Africa that does not create necessary jobs. One of the consequences of not fully integrating our markets, investors get frustrated when they cannot export within even the East African community. The GDP of Africa today, the GDP of the whole of Africa is US dollars 3.6 trillion. The whole of Africa, Africa yote, the GDP is 3.6 trillion. That of the USA is US dollars 31.82 trillion. The GDP of USA is bigger than the one of Africa, more than 10 times. China is now 20.6 trillion. India is US dollars 4.18 trillion. Even little South Korea has got a GDP of US dollars 1.86 trillion. One may ask, why does the little South Korea have the GDP, that GDP size? One factor is that South Korea, because of the Cold War politics, benefited a lot from the USA market. However, in our Luganda language we say, Omugo oguli ku muliraano teggobango. The stick in the neighbor's house will not help you to scare away the leopard. If the leopard comes to attack you, you are not going to say, I get a stick from the neighbor to chase the leopard. You must have your own stick in your own house. You need your own stick in your own house. You have seen Mr. Trump recently threatening tariffs on South Korea and others. The question we need to ask is, does size of the domestic market matter in terms of attracting investments, domestic or foreign? Because we have got economists, professors, what have you, they are very many. But I think the size of the market matters. The size of your market matters. Why? China opened up its economy in 1978, when many of the African countries were already under the pastoralism of the World Bank and the IMF, were already investing, implementing structural adjustment, all those things, etc. The Chinese are still communists. Chinese are communists. Yesterday, today, tomorrow. Yet the economy has attracted US dollars 2.7 trillion from outside since 1978, while the whole of Africa has attracted US dollars 1.8 trillion. The GDP of China in 1978 was US dollars 149 billion. 149 billion, that's what it was in 1978, the GDP of China. It is now US dollars 20.6 trillion. India opened up in the year 1991. Since that time, it has attracted US dollars 1.2 trillion in foreign investments. By that time, the GDP of India was US dollars 270 billion, small. India's GDP is now US dollars 4.18 trillion. The three richest countries in the world today are all big countries, big land mass and big population. While we look for foreign markets, the reliable core market is the internal one, It is guaranteed. The richest countries are the USA, China, and India. I appeal to the youth of East Africa, of Africa, to go back to uhuru na umoja. Recently, I met some Gen Z from Kenya. They came to Uganda, that they are experts in organizing riots. And they had come to Uganda to give technical support. to the Ugandan Gen Z, how to riot. But some among the Ugandans said, but you people, why don't we go and see this old man? So these children came. The ones from Uganda and from Kenya, they came. Said, we are experts in riots. I said, okay, I can join you. But what are we rioting for? They said corruption, what? I said, okay, but even if there was no corruption, if you don't address the issues of structure, if you have got a small market, even if there is no corruption, how will the economy expand? So I said, why don't you go and talk about East African issues? So I told His Excellency, I am here with your Gen Z. So I gave them some transport and they went back. I appeal to the youth of East Africa to go back to uhuru na umoja. This uhuru na uhasama is really a disaster. I had the Last Supper with Mwalimu in a house near here in Arusha. Mr. Butiku and Mr. Maro Adam were present. When I arrived for the dinner, I saw a Tanzanian girl who spoke Chihaya, whom I knew, standing on the veranda waiting for me. She was one of Mwalimu's aides. I greeted her in Chihaya, which is close to the dialects of Uganda. Wabonaki, I said. She answered, Tinka boine kantushana na boneiwe. Abahaya mwachurra. Mwachurra echo. The greeting is in the form of a question. The question is, what have you seen? The answer is, I have seen nothing special except you now. Then I asked, Nokorono Mugursi, you work with Mzee these days? Her answer was yes. Mwalimu overheard us. He asked, Mnasema lugha gani? Mwalimu asked us, he didn't know. What language are you speaking? I explained to Mwalimu that all the dialects up to Mwanza are close to Runyankore, my dialect. I was surprised Mwalimu did not know that. Even the Kisukuma, Chinyamwezi, and other dialects in Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Kenya, DRC, are close to the dialects of Uganda. Swahili contains a lot of words from the dialects of Bara kule kwetu, huko ndani, inland Africa. What God has put together, man shall not put asunder. It says in the book of Mark, chapter 10, verse 9. During that Last Supper with Mwalimu, here in Arusha, I was discussing with him the very issues I'm telling you now. God bless you. Excellencies, permit me, I will handle agenda items 3 and 4 together.
Yes,
Excellencies, you
that
record
is
that during
President
our closed
Yoweri
session,
Kaguta Museveni,
the heads
the
of
president
state
of Uganda, who
appointed a
now
Secretary
is a
General
new chair of
for the East African
East
Community
African Community.
and the judges
You
of the
heard
Court of
a lot
Justice.
from President
We now
Museveni.
proceed to witness the
He's
swearing
spoken many
in
things,
of the
but I would like
appointed
to
persons.
focus on few things that Museveni has spoken. Of course, I've already shared my views on what Museveni said. Of course, Museveni insisting the issue of unity is spoken about languages that are connecting Africans, whether you are in Tanzania, whether you are in Uganda, in Rwanda, Burundi, um, Kenya, you can see that there are some languages that are interacting or connecting Africans. So this means that we are one, we are Africans. On the issue of Uhuru and the Umoja, Museveni has spoken very well that right now we have independence that, of course, he called Uhuru, we are free. But one thing that we are still lacking is Umoja, means unity. We lack unity right now in the continent of Africa. So maybe because Museveni has become the new chair of East African Community, maybe he will emphasize uh, leaders in the East African community to come together and unite. Have been saying this many times. Of course, if you're familiar in this platform, I created a video calling President Museveni that you, Museveni, you are unheard. The list, of course, if you remove President Paul Biya of Cameroon, the list are below President Museveni. Museveni is among of the leaders who ruled Africa for a long time. So he knows very well the geopolitics and issues on this continent. So before maybe he retired and um, going home, Museveni has to do one thing: call all African leaders. Of course, I said that Museveni is a military leader, is general. Um, why Museveni don't bring together President Kagame, President Traore, President Chiani, President Goita, those who are soldiers, and bring them together and say, no, we lack unity or we lack um, power because we are disunited. Why don't we soldiers, Museveni, Kagame, Traore, and others who are soldiers, why don't these leaders, um, military leaders, don't come together to form one of a united army for Africa? I suggested like that because I see, if you look very keenly in Africa, we have military leaders starting in the middle, in the East Africa, talk about Kagame, Seven himself. These are soldiers. Go to South Sudan, the leader are soldiers. Go to Sudan, those leaders who are fighting are soldiers. If you go to West Africa, you're talking about President Traore, President Goita, President Chian, President of Sierra Leone. Those are soldiers. Almost mm, every region, we have soldiers. If you go to Zimbabwe, President Emerson Dambuso Mnangagwa is a soldier. Why don't these military leaders having their own meeting? Like for a long time, we have failed to come together to have a single army. Why don't we start with our own army? So I suggest like that, but all in all, we are waiting to see. Maybe it will happen. But one thing that is undermining African sovereignty and African freedom is the issue of disunity. So now let us move to a speech delivered by President, of course, a tribute speech delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa, a powerful tribute at the funeral of civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson. You know that Museveni, sorry, my mind is still blinking Museveni. Um, President Cyril Ramaphosa had traveled a lot of miles, kilometers from South Africa to Chicago to mourn and to deliver this powerful tribute at the funeral of civil rights icon Reverend Jesse Jackson. Ramaphosa was asked to talk about 2 minutes, but one thing that he said, I cannot travel a lot of kilometers, miles to talk for 2 minutes. He said, I will talk for 30 minutes. Of course, he spent almost 23 minutes, but he's spoken very well why he traveled from South Africa to Chicago for this iconic human civil rights icon, Reverend Jesse Jackson. So let me share what President Ramaphosa said
If we
in
can
that
please
event.
all stand and welcome the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Thank you, Program Director, the family of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson, congressmen and women who are here present, Mayor of Chicago and the leadership of this organization, friends and colleagues. Program Director, I heard you say that if you are not a Jackson, you can only speak for 2 minutes. But I have traveled 14,000 kilometers. Which is 9,000 miles over 24 hours. And Jesse Jackson's story and relationship with South Africa can never be told in 2 minutes. So indulge me in my 30 minutes. I will tell the story. The people of South Africa are with you today as you lay to rest a great man, and as you celebrate a remarkable life that altered the moral direction of a nation and inspired the conscience of the world. We are here to join you as you say farewell to a man who carried a message of hope from the streets of Chicago to the streets of Soweto in Johannesburg. But today we are also here as South Africans to lay claim to Reverend Jesse Jackson as one of our own, and to say he does not belong to you only, he also belongs to us. But we lay claim on him because he first laid claim on us. He chose us. You may ask, how can a son of South Carolina belong to the people of Soweto? How can a man born in segregated African American or American South be claimed by the people of a faraway land that was bedeviled by the racist system of apartheid? Well, I'll tell you how, and I'll tell you why. Belonging is not determined by the soil on which you were born. Belonging is determined by the soil on which you choose to join the fight against an evil system. In the long and painful years of our struggle, when the voices of our people were often silenced. Jesse Jackson chose to belong to us by raising his voice against apartheid on our behalf. When our cause was ignored and many would look away and walk away, he stood firm in his solidarity with us. He looked at a people he had never met and said, "Your pain is my pain. The chains that bind you are my chains. Your struggle for freedom is my struggle as well." And for this, the people of South Africa remember him not as a distant friend, but as a brother in the struggle for justice and freedom. That is why we claim him as ours too today. Jesse Jackson was an African. We lay claim to him because he was an African. Pledging his solidarity with our struggle did make him one of us, an African American. Ours, not only yours. He epitomized the image that was depicted by one of the key founders of the African National Congress, Pixley Kaisa Kaseme, who delivered a most famous speech in 1906 here in the United States when he was a student at Columbia University. And he said, "I am an African, and I set my pride in my race against a hostile public opinion. The brighter day is rising upon Africa. Already I seem to see her chains dissolved." That speech captured the spirit of African pride and hope. That is what Jesse Jackson meant to South Africa and Africa. Hence we stand here and say he belonged to us. Jesse Jackson stood with the people of South Africa during our darkest days and hours against apartheid. He told the world that the struggle for dignity in the United States was inseparable from the fight against apartheid and injustice in South Africa. When Jesse Jackson reminded the United States that its strength as a nation lies not in exclusion, but in the beautiful diversity of its people, black and white, rich and poor, urban and rural, workers and farmers, immigrants and the forgotten, we were hugely inspired by his message. Nelson Mandela and his comrades were hugely inspired too by Jesse Jackson whilst they were serving life sentences on Robben Island, as they observed how Jesse Jackson carried out our struggle for justice beyond the borders of the United States. He was a voice that refused to be silenced when silence would have been easier. A voice that preached a message of hope from the streets of Chicago to the dusty streets of Gugulethu in Cape Town in South Africa. That justice was not a privilege for the few, but a birthright for all. His rallying call, "Keep hope alive," became a compass of our struggle and gave us hope for victory over the evil system of apartheid, exclusion, division, and oppression. Jesse Jackson expressed his solidarity with us when he visited for the first time South Africa and came to Soweto 47 years ago after the killing of Steve Biko in apartheid police cells. He drew massive crowds at rallies in Soweto where he famously declared, as though he was a prophet, and indeed he was, he said, "This land is changing hands." When the Reagan administration chose constructive engagement, diplomatic language for doing nothing, Jesse Jackson chose unconditional solidarity with the oppressed majority in South Africa. He became the most visible American public figure advocating for comprehensive pressure and economic sanctions against apartheid South Africa. By placing South Africa at the center of American electoral politics during his presidential election campaign, Jesse Jackson influenced millions of voters to confront apartheid as their moral responsibility too. He led many marches here in the United States, and in 1985 was arrested with his two sons, Jesse Jr. and Jonathan, outside the South African embassy. They were arrested, and as they were arrested, they sang the song which Stevie Wonder rendered here, "We Shall Overcome." It was a song that became part of our struggle freedom songs, from which we drew inspiration. He took the fight against apartheid globally. On the 2nd of November 1985, he marched with the ANC President Oliver Tambo, anti-apartheid movement President Trevor Huddleston, and more than 150,000 people in what was one of the largest anti-apartheid demonstrations ever held in Britain. Not only did he march in the streets, he walked into the corridors of power. He opened doors, and when the doors were closed, he kicked them down. He personally lobbied international leaders. He lobbied Pope John Paul II to visit South Africa and hasten change. He pressed Mikhail Gorbachev to cut all Soviet diplomatic ties with Pretoria. He challenged Margaret Thatcher to her face. She refused to budge, but he did not stop. When Nelson Mandela finally walked free in 1990, after 27 years of imprisonment, Jesse Jackson was there in Cape Town, witnessing a moment the world would never forget. He described the atmosphere as a release of glee and joy, as millions celebrated not only the freedom of a man, but the rising hope of a nation, the South African nation. In 1994, he was present when Nelson Mandela became the first democratically elected president of South Africa. Jesse Jackson kept returning after 1994, when many of his contemporaries moved on. We claim Jesse Jackson as one of our own because he never saw the struggle of the people of South Africa as a distant or foreign cause, but as a struggle that belonged to him as well. His greatest gift to the oppressed people of South Africa was the courage he gave us to believe that we must never surrender hope, that justice would prevail and freedom would come. He encouraged us not to lose hope in the face of oppression, not to lose hope in the face of injustice, to have hope that ordinary people standing together would write their own history of triumph against apartheid. The life of Reverend Jesse Jackson reminds us that the struggle for justice is never the work of a single lifetime. It is a long and noble journey that is carried forward across generations. In fact, it is a relay in which the torch of freedom is passed from one generation to another. Martin Luther King Jr. lifted that torch and gave the world a dream of justice and equality. Jesse Jackson carried that dream forward with hope, keeping its flame alive in the hearts of those who refuse to surrender to injustice. And Nelson Mandela carried that dream into freedom, helping to build a rainbow nation where dignity and liberty could belong to us all. And so today, that torch still burns. It is now in our hands to guard it, to carry it forward and to ensure that the dream of justice continues to light the path for generations yet to come. Now we must ask ourselves as we are gathered here, how can we honor the life and the memory of Jesse Jackson? We honor him by carrying forward the values that he lived for: justice, dignity, equality. By committing to a lifetime of service to others, by showing up when others look away from injustice, when they fear to stand up to power, and when they walk away from suffering, by pledging solidarity and using every opportunity to support the just struggle of others, and by ensuring that there is justice for all, by keeping hope alive, what Jesse Jackson taught us. Today we honor a man whose voice stirred the conscience of leaders and ordinary people, whose courage strengthened movements across the world, and whose faith never wavered, even when the road was long and difficult. To our mother, Jacqueline Jackson, to his children, we would like to say the following. We, as the people of South Africa, are here to say thank you. The African National Congress, the organization I lead, with which Jesse Jackson worked closely with, also says thank you. We are here not only in mourning, but in gratitude, deep, abiding, and unrepayable gratitude. You gave us your husband, your father, your patriarch. You shared him across an ocean and across continents, across marches and prison gates and inauguration days. When South Africa needed a friend in the corridors of power, you allowed Jesse Jackson to be that friend. His support meant that when our people were tear-gassed in Soweto, someone in America was weeping with us. It meant that when our leaders sat in prison cells on Robben Island, someone was standing in the capitals of the world, in Washington and in London, saying Nelson Mandela and his comrades are not terrorists or criminals, they are freedom fighters, and saying that the world must listen and act. We are grateful that on the day that Nelson Mandela walked free, on that historic and miraculous day, Jesse Jackson was standing in the sunlight with us. not because it was required of him, but because it was in him to witness the emergence of the South Africa he had campaigned for, a South Africa he had been arrested for, that he struggled for and prophesied about in Soweto in 1979. We honor him for his enduring commitment, his expression of real love, sacrificial love. The commitment he displayed did not wait to be invited. It made him simply show up. And Jesse Jackson always showed up without anyone's permission. He showed up for South Africa, and he showed up again and again and again. Long after the cameras had moved on, long after sanctions were won, long after apartheid had been defeated and relegated to the ash heap of history, Jesse Jackson kept coming back to express his gratitude. As a free nation, South Africa awarded him the Order of the Companions of O.R. Tambo, one of the highest honors that we bestow on someone who struggled with us. But truth be said, no medal, no honor, no citation is important enough to express what Jesse Jackson gave and meant to us. What he gave to us cannot be framed and hung on a wall. It lives in our Constitution today. It lives in our freedom. It lives in the hearts of our people. That is why we are here today, to carry Jesse Jackson's spirit home with us. For the hope he nurtured, the courage that he inspired, and the solidarity that he showed to our people must not end with this moment. It must continue to inspire us in our shared journey to build a better life for our people. So on behalf of 62 million freedom-loving South Africans, we say thank you. We say, go well, Reverend, go well. The ancestors, Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Winnie Mandela, and many others, both here and in South Africa, have been waiting to embrace you. And we, the people of the Rainbow Nation, that you, Jesse Jackson, helped to build, salute you, and we say power to you. But we also say, rise, African Jesse Jackson, rise. And we say, rest, African Jesse Jackson, and thank you, we thank you eternally for your support for our struggle. Thank you to all of you. Thank you.